Take a look at the front pages then, starting with the Financial Times, which looks into how Chinese businesses even are skirting Trump's tariff wall by exporting goods to America via Southeast Asia. The eye leads with the Environment Secretary claiming the UK was less than a decade away from needing to ration water, if not for the government securing more than £100 billion to build more reservoirs. In the Metro, calls from Britain's most senior police chief to replace dozens of regional forces with 12 supersized ones, marking the biggest policing shake-up in decades. Daily Star says the UK will be hotter than Delhi, another heatwave expected from Wednesday. It ain't a hot mum, their take on it. Sun reporting former England striker Wayne Rooney has secured a 2-year broadcasting deal with the BBC worth £800,000 following his unsuccessful stint as a football manager. The Guardian front page has Downing Street facing another battle after last week's retreat on welfare changes as MPs raised the alarm at the overhaul of the special needs education system in England. The Times also leading with Sir Keir Starmer facing a fresh backbench revolt over special needs support in schools. While the Express reports that the Prime Minister has been warned by campaigners that a stealth tax raid on the state pension would be an insult to all older people. Front page of the Daily Mail, senior policing officials claim the stench of cannabis makes them feel unsafe as they pledge to crack down on the drug. Telegraph says Labour is willing to explore a new wealth tax on assets worth more than £10 million, following Lord Kinnock's remarks on Sky News earlier today after the government's U-turn on welfare reforms. And on the front of the Mirror, a special report on a dentist who says he was fined and made to pay £150,000 in penalties for keeping his patients' teeth too healthy, causing them to not need fillings. Well, let's talk more. Then Alex and Anna are here. A real range of stories, certainly, including Anna, the Times.
Yes.
The Prime Minister facing a fresh revolt. This is about special educational needs in schools.
Yes. So, again, this is really led by a difficulty that, first of all, the special needs sector has not had the money that it would need because there's a growth in the number of children who require what used to be called statementing, but it's with special needs provision. And, of course, it's a huge range. It's everything from a child who's got dyslexia, who needs extra support in school, right the way through the spectrum to those children who are profoundly disabled and will need proper residential care, not as children, but actually into adulthood. So it costs, apparently, somewhere in the region, what did we read? £12 billion a year. So you can see where the squeeze is coming from the Treasury. So this paper is going to be published, this white paper, in October. And it's talking about, this I don't understand, focusing on early intervention. Presumably that's with low-level special needs. Improving provision for support for in mainstream schools, hugely controversial, difficult, rather than much more expensive specialist schools. This will put the fear of God, and that's why backbench Labour and I suspect Conservative MPs will be so concerned, is that if you've got a child with profoundly disabled with real needs, you want them safe in a place that is caring and loving for the future, and that includes after you've gone. So you can just see this one coming down, can't you?
The message from, again, from Bridget Phillipson, Education Secretary, we will strengthen and put in place better support for children, suggesting that they inherited a SEN, Special Educational Needs and Disability System, left on its knees, and it is looking at changes to improve support for children and parents. But you're saying it's a backroot squeeze on money again. Is that the fear?
There is that, but there's also, and again, this unrealistic look at what is the actual problem. And some of that they're not a problem, children with profound disabilities, but they can be in the sense that they need rightly so, to be properly looked after in places as I've described. And that costs an awful lot of money. And it's a huge conundrum, and it's this pressure from the Treasury, and it's going to be hitting, supposedly, looks like, some of the most vulnerable.
Education, health and care plans, EHCPs, are what many parents will rely on to get the council to give them the help that their family needs. And the understanding that the Times reports is that as part of the government's plans to reform this sector and supposedly improve it, they're considering restricting use of those plans and restricting the number of those that go out. Well, this will have many families very worried, and this is, of course, why there's been a letter-writing campaign to The Guardian from many people who work in the industry. But the Times takes a different approach and talks about the challenges to the Prime Minister actually being able to deliver such a plan, whatever its merits or demerits might be. And I've got to tell you, I just don't think they'll be able to get it through. We have seen, with their inability to deliver their flagship welfare policy, that if enough backbenchers stand up to this government, then they'll fold. And the point about backbench revolts is, it's not like it just happens once and everyone just folds their tents and say, there we go, don't worry, it'll never happen again. Revolting is habit-forming.
Revolt. Boom, yes, indeed. And in fact, the welfare bill itself comes in on Wednesday, amendments are being tabled, and the rebels are promising to rebel again.
It's still got PIP in its name, and there aren't any points in it.
They changed...
Yeah, they took that out.
Well done, they fixed the name. Yeah, OK, real reform.
Left in the bill that affected PIPs.
The problem is with, special educational needs diagnoses, if you like, comes, for example, a taxi, from home to school, and that adds to the cost for some kids. So, is there ways of allowing people a really good education and all the help they need in school, while trimming some of the extras that people get? I don't know.
I don't know. I still think the problem will be politically is that everybody will focus on those with profound disabilities who have to fight like tigers to get things which should be an absolute given. And whilst right at the other end of the spectrum, perhaps, I only say perhaps, there are some families who say, well, my child is dyslexic and he or she needs special needs, when actually they sort of don't.
But they were called dunces before they got special help. Do you know what I mean? That's the problem, isn't it, at that level? So you're writing off other children if you say they're not profound.
What many families would be concerned about, in answer to your question, is, yeah, sure, maybe there are things things you can do to trim the provision that might be given, and we can find ways, especially with technology, to try and reduce some cost. To the point, if you put the EHCP for my child under threat, it means there's no place for them in the school in the first place.
Yeah, OK. Let's just see The Guardian. It's the same thing. New battle for number 10 as MPs raise alarm on special needs provision. But as you say, the mood is of rebellion, and that's the difficulty.
Yes.
In the meantime, let's move on to the Daily Express, which is really like, where does money get found? Now, I suppose. State pension tax. A stealth tax raid on the state pension would be an insult. Where did this idea come from?
So it is not a stealth tax, except in the way that we all understand tax thresholds to work. It's not a new tax. It's the suggestion that the threshold for receiving the pension, the state pension in the UK, wouldn't rise with in the way that it would otherwise do. Of course, all the political parties went to the electorate last year, committed to the triple lock. In fact, the Conservative Party, with a rush of blood to its head, committed itself to a quadruple lock. Remembering what the fourth one was, it temporarily escapes me. But don't worry, because the electorate tested that theory, and we won't need to be exercising the fourth lock anyway. I think the more important thing to think about here is how we approach pensions in the first place. Because on the one hand, trying to live on the state pension in this country, if you're really trying to be exceptionally hard, on the other hand, your average pensioner in the United Kingdom now is better off than your average working person. And if you get to that point, and you're still saying we're going to triple lock your income in all manner of ways, even if we have something like a pandemic and things plummet, but the pension still shoots upwards, we've got to get that right. And
then you're reintroducing what is expensive and complicated means testing, effectively, aren't you?
We may be.
So that is the tough point, which we saw Labour fall at the first time.
Unless you're willing to tackle those...
pensioner in the room.
Oh.
Well, I am. I'm 68.
No, I was going to say...
We all thought you were far younger, so...
Yes, we did, yeah.
But seriously, I am 68, and I have a state pension. And I'll tell you, the one thing that really, really hacks me off is that, as we see it, as we should all see it, we pay in, and when we get paid out finally, when we're a pensioner, we have to pay tax on it. So I paid in from my taxed income, and now as a pensioner, I get tax. If you want to start doing things that are right, you would say, why do I get free prescriptions when I'm 60? Why do you get free prescriptions when you're 60?
Because you become iller and your income goes down.
No, not when you're 60.
No,
we try to encourage people to carry on working.
Yeah, but they don't, doesn't mean they all
There's no
can.
logic to it. There is no logic to it at all. Yeah. And these
because all pensions
we're not
used to
allowed
be
to talk
free,
about it.
and it's an incremental step towards.
No, it was a sweetie that was
used to be free, didn't they?
Not
Entirely.
pensions.
I mean,
You lost it from
I lost myself.
It's a sweetie that was put out. It's like the winter fuel allowance. It was a sweetie that was put out in the run-up to an election.
But you need to take all our sweeties away.
We do need to tackle some of them, and to give this government credit, although it failed on each one. You're trying to reform. It was absurd handing.
Oh, so you corporate types think you're rock stars?
That's as ridiculous as us being corporate types. Let's begin.
Rockstar move using Workday to handle all our AI agents.
Well, watch me handle my agent, Gary. Bubbly water, no bubbles.
So what did you do this weekend?
The usual.
Shout out to Carmen for using Workday to manage our people and AI agents.
What are we doing?
Just clap.
Carmen!
For a lot of people of my age and my generation is not going to be the same for your generation and my children's
But who do they
generation.
have to be tough on? Clearly, the answer should be the Labour backbenchers, who they have not been tough on.
No, they haven't.
Take you to the Daily
Absolutely.
Telegraph, and here is the left suggesting ideas now. So they think they're winning.
What,
This is
Kinnock?
Longleg. Just on the news this morning. Well,
sorry, darling. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm just saying that the idea is like you squeeze the rich, which is the idea of the left of the Labour Party.
Lord Kinnock on your station today explained his view that we should have a wealth tax, and that people who had assets worth more than £10 million should pay some 2% of tax on the value of those assets. And over time, he claimed some extraordinarily high amount would come to the Treasury. I think it was certainly in the billions, 10 billion, I think he claimed, to the Treasury each year. This implies that the world is static and people don't have any choice. And what we've seen in recent times, even without his wealth tax, is that very wealthy people are very nimble and very willing to redomicile. Indeed, the United Kingdom in the past has been a beneficiary of that movement. But we know that in the last year, we've lost more millionaires than anyone else. We also know that the top 1% of taxpayers pay some 29% of all tax in this country. And driving them away, to me, doesn't seem like a very good idea.
Bonkers. And the maths don't add up either.
No, 10 million
it is, isn't it? It's plucked out of the air, and it doesn't fix the hole that's been created by Labour backbenchers who are not willing to face up and to the reality of the situation that we are in as a nation and take tough decisions for which they will be thanked in the future.
But then you get,
honest with people.
But if you don't change thresholds, which with respect to the Express type article, and people get 40% of their salary taken off them when they feel like they can't pay, mortgage or rent or whatever it is, then at that point it feels unfair to your middle earners, doesn't it? And so who
exactly, and that's Labour's trick, and that's what they've got to do.
It may emotionally feel that way, and that emotion may have some justification to it. But people understand the more wealthy people we have in this country, the lower their taxes can be as an overall part of the scheme, because those people are contributing way more than the rest of us. Then you might feel different about it. Squeezing the rich may feel good to you, but it won't feel good in the medium or long term.
OK, lots more still to come in the next part of our programme, including the super heat wave on its way, with the Star's sound advice to keep the sun lotion close by. Back in a moment. Watching the press preview, we're joined again by the PR consultant Alex Dean and the barrister and former government minister Anna Soubry. Welcome back to both of you. Let's go to Gaza, shall we? We know that Netanyahu of Israel is flying to meet Trump at the White House. Here we have a report from Gaza and from Jerusalem. Exhaustion in Gaza vies with hopes of a ceasefire. You know, so much exhaustion, more deaths today. I think 100 Israeli strikes. The system for aid seems dysfunctional, looking at it. You know, 400 sites to 4 giving out food for people.
And yet we saw on your own channel, before we came on air, President Trump speaking about some positivity, his belief that there is likely to be a deal done between those participants. Hamas does seem to be the current sticking point, because there was a deal put on the table that was agreed to, but conveyed to them by Qatar, that had been agreed to by other parties that they would not agree to.
Because they want a permanent, or something leading to a permanent ceasefire. If it's 60 days that's on the table, they want it to be a permanent ceasefire.
I think few people in any sort of conflict say, well, I'm never coming back to warfare. I mean, if you committed on October the 7th again, I wouldn't strike. So it's very unlikely that in reality anyone would make that kind of commitment, particularly because some of the hostages still haven't been returned. Let's not forget.
But, I mean, look, how much longer can this continue for?
This looks actually not as bad as some of the other shots.
Which is higher rise, yeah.
Yeah. The place has just been bombed to oblivion. We've got to be honest about this again. The world is standing back, and it's appalling what is happening. And this is what Netanyahu wants. And the idea, I think, that he's going to agree to... He hasn't achieved any of his goals. He hasn't got the hostages back. He hasn't destroyed Hamas. He isn't going to suddenly agree to a ceasefire.
He's helped make Gaza uninhabitable.
That's what he wants.
Well, maybe that's the quiet aim of the right and far right in his coalition government.
I don't think it's just them as well, because the world has stood by and allowing this to happen.
Hang on. This imagery is, of course, remarkably striking and awful. But unlike Hamas, which seeks to kill civilians indiscriminately, Israel warns people before they are going to strike. And what Israel is... and tries to move them out of areas.
No, they don't.
Hang on. Hamas uses bombs to kill
civilians. We know that Hamas is evil and wicked.
Israel seeks... well, you can't just brush past it.
I'm not. But
you just did.
No, because it's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is how do we achieve peace? And this...
You both spent a little time saying how terrible what Israel had done was, and I was saying there's another side to that discussion which we should be willing to have.
No, but we can all talk endlessly about how evil and wicked Hamas are. No, but that's not the issue at the moment. The issue is that Netanyahu in Israel is actually not moving towards peace. It's not got its objectives, and it's not moving towards peace because it's tried it in the past and it's failed, and it's had this barbaric group of terrorists on its doorstep, bombing them to oblivion and committing hideous effects. And so what it's doing now is wipe them all out.
That is not the issue at the moment. The issue we are discussing is that there is a peace deal on the table, and it's currently Hamas saying no to it. So you said Hamas being bad isn't the issue? It is.
Alex, Anna, these are clearly previous pictures. Coverage of that continues. Thank you both very much indeed for joining us tonight. Thank you.
The perfect climate, wherever the destination. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
High pressure will return this week, bringing sunshine and rising temperatures. Heatwave conditions look likely for some by the weekend. Expect a largely dry start to the day, bar a few showers, but southeast England looks wet. Rain there will clear to leave a mostly dry morning with plenty of sunshine. There'll be just a little cloud over Wales and northern and central England, which will give a few showers. It'll be a bit cooler than the weekend, with strong winds near the coast. The afternoon will be largely fine, with showers generally light and well scattered, but some heavy ones may affect northeast England later.
The perfect climate, whatever the forecast. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.